Live, and we are live.
Yes,
Still,
we are.
still among the living. Joe Chaffee and Joe Rayo on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, or as it is more commonly known as, How Can We Ruin Sal Blandino's Weekend? Poor Sal,
Oh,
he's on the
what?
chat board. He was earlier. He was already skulking about uh, the horrors of the Memorial Day holiday weekend and whether whether that gets replayed or not. Before we even get to any of that nonsense, what a spectacular day it was today.
This
It
had to
really,
be
the best day
not
of the
just
spring, I think.
not just one of the top 10 days. This was one of the top 5 days. You can't get any better than.
No,
And I speak to you now, Joe. Now I stepped outside and I noticed that we have kind of a veil of or a mottled bit of high cloudiness,
oh,
which
just a smidge. I could, just a smidge.
it turned out to be an absolutely gorgeous day all around. It was just beautiful, and they don't come any better than what we had today for any
No,
time.
listen, I took advantage of it. It was a nice day. I usually do a weather update in the morning, but I didn't do anything until about 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon. I went out, I went out at 8. I walked my 10 miles today, and then did some ribs on the grill. So you know what? Every once in a while, when the weather's like this, you just have the time to take a step back and just say, you know what? There's not much going on, so let's enjoy it. And it really was just an absolutely just the humidity was wonderful. That's the thing. We're getting to that time of year where you get those days where the humidity is can really rob you of any energy, and this was just great.
Now you know about the standards of most summer days. Tomorrow is not going to be anything shabby. I mean,
No, not at
it'll
all.
be in the low to mid 80s. Dew points will be probably in the mid 50s, and by those standards, that's
That's
pretty good.
perfectly
But
fine. Yeah, it'd just
when
be a
you
little.
compare it to what we had today, people are going to be saying, "I can feel the humidity." I said,
Oh, they
it's a little
could.
bit
They
up.
can't. They can't feel the humidity. No, they need to stop. That's nonsense. They do
You
not
really
feel the
think so?
humidity. What's that?
You really think so?
Oh no,
I mean,
people
today
will
was
say, "Oh, it's more." There'll definitely be the few people that'll have the audacity to say that tomorrow will be more humid. Okay,
right,
you got a 30-degree spread between the temperature and the dew point. I'm not going to call that humid.
right.
I even hesitate when it gets up to about 60. When it starts to get like 62, 63, 64, you know, and then it starts to then it starts to be bothersome a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Those
And
people
speaking
need
of,
they need to be silent.
that's probably where it's going to be on Wednesday. Wednesday looks like probably 64, 65 for the dew point, and by the end of the day, maybe we might see a little precipitation, a little shower, or maybe a rumble or two of thunder. But I think most of that is going to hold off until Wednesday night, and especially so on Thursday.
Well, here's the thing that kind of bothered me when I look at SPC, and I don't know why. Maybe they got it. They don't have any thunderstorms here during the day during Wednesday, but their time period is from 12Z Wednesday to 12Z Thursday. So, am I supposed to look at that map and think that that also includes Wednesday night? That they're not talking about any thunderstorms? Maybe a chance for a
I
thunderstorm for Wednesday night?
will recall that they had nothing for us
Right? No. I know
wise on
they'll catch up.
Saturday.
They're on day 3, so that's day 3. So that'll get
Right,
adjusted.
right,
But and
probably.
again, it's not a knock on them. I just kind of thought it was sort of strange. The map that they have for Wednesday makes sense if you want to say, if you want to make the argument that nothing gets in here until after say 7 or 8 o'clock. Okay, I can buy that. But if you're covering the whole overnight into Thursday morning, then I think you're going to need to move that line a little bit.
You have some problems if you don't have anything in here. Wednesday night, most definitely. I think we're going to see at least the threat of some thunderstorm activity. And Thursday seems to be the day for us, as that cold front associated with. Is it pronounced Cristobal? I
Cristobal, roll your R, Joe. You're Italian. You should be able to roll your R's. Can you roll your R's?
why
Why?
why?
Because you should roll your R's.
Well, I can. Why don't we just go
Reo,
full screen? Go full screen.
Cristobal. I can't go full screen yet. You got to buy me a little time. I'm trying to find.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sorry.
I'm trying to. I have to switch. I have to switch satellites here. Which I'm.
Joe Torres, who is a news anchor on weekends at Channel 7 Eyewitness News,
Mhm.
he was doing a story on the tropical storm, and he pronounced it in a way or a manner which I did like a double take. I said, "Is that how you pronounce it?" Obviously, Joe Torres must be Hispanic, Spanish origin, and so
Right.
he's able to roll the tongue a little bit and be able to put more of an emphasis on certain vowels of
Well,
the
okay. So
name.
how did he say it?
I I I can't even. It was not Chris. It was not simply just Cristobal. It was said in a real Spanish type accent. And
Okay.
I said, wow, that's if you're gonna say it,
Cristobal. I
excuse
mean,
me.
it's. I can't see. Spanish and Italian are very similar. If I'm
I
reading that as
understand that,
Italian, I would say
but
Cristobal.
it was just the way he said that. Cristobal, or Cristobal. I you know somebody just asked me about a half an hour ago. I got an email from a friend, and he said, "How do you pronounce that?" And I found someplace on YouTube. I actually typed in Google. I said, "How do you pronounce?" And I typed in the name, and it came back with several YouTubes where somebody, a woman or a man of Spanish extraction or whatever like that, was telling me, yeah, and they say it over and over again, Cristobal, Cristobal,
Okay.
Um,
Cristobal.
yeah.
All right.
What what's the
Well, look,
next
let's move on.
what's the next one on the D storm? Is that Dolly?
Dolly.
Dolly. We won't
Okay.
have any problem in pronouncing Dolly.
No, we would just have to say hello.
Yes.
Meanwhile, one thing I love when these tropical storms come in, when once they come inland on the satellite loop, when you look at them on the satellite loop when they're well inland, and they've got a lot of sometimes they have these fantastic satellite signatures, and this one does. I mean, I got it full screen up for you, Joe. I covered my face so that you could, the world can see you and what's left of this. But what a well-defined circulation that is moving northward up through Arkansas and heading up into the middle Mississippi Valley. Pretty loaded. There's some severe weather that's breaking out in parts of the Gulf states with this. So this is going to become a pretty wrapped up extratropical storm, and don't be surprised that there will be snow out of this in northern Ontario, maybe up in Manitoba. Those places up in Canada could get some snow out of this with a 980-ish low over James Bay.
The you don't often see tropical cyclones make it all the way up as far north. Admittedly, when they're out in the ocean and they go up to, let's say, Newfoundland, and that's what, latitude 55.
Right.
And or sometimes they go all the way across the Atlantic and hit England, which is also like latitude 55. But it's not often that you see a tropical system work its way out of the Gulf and make it all the way through the middle of the nation. It doesn't break apart into just a mass of clouds and scattered showers, but it will still be fairly well held together by the time it passes over Lake Superior on Wednesday morning and actually continues north into James Bay and up toward Hudson Bay by later Wednesday and Thursday.
Well, here's the Atlantic view on the GFS, so that you can actually see it up into pretty far a ways into Canada there. Hold on, I hit the wrong button. There we go. But there's your the tropical system, with what's left of it, in Arkansas this evening, and then moves up into Missouri. But now you've got this non-tropical low that is developing to its west, and it basically is going to become one. This whole mess in here is just going to become one big extratropical cyclone. They're going to blow away. In terms of the winds, they got high wind warnings up. I'm going to go over that in a little bit, but in parts of in the Central Plains, there's a large area that's under a high wind warning. And there's your low, Joe, a 983 low over Lake Superior by Wednesday morning, and then just runs up. It gets to about the south shore of Hudson Bay, hits a bit of a brick wall, and then starts to translate east northeast into Labrador. you could still follow it here midway between Labrador and Greenland, and then it's the low weakens and fills and makes landfall on the southern shores of Greenland. That's pretty impressive.
It is. It is. And again, usually when you have a system from the Gulf go inland, it maintains itself for a little while, and then frictional drag and just the combination of it moving over the land usually breaks it up into, just a disorganized mass of clouds and showers. But this thing is really going to hold together until it gets all the way up into the Great Lakes. And again, it's not often that you see that, but this system will have a lot going for it with a lot of wet weather. And as you just pointed out, Joe, in parts of the Central Plains, very strong and gusty winds. I'm not sure if their version of a high wind warning is the same criteria as what we would call high wind warnings in the Northeast or in the New York area. But in any case, there will be quite a bit of a breeze, I'm sure, blowing on the backside of that thing as it moves on by over the next 24 hours.
Oh, and by the way, noted this on the GFS to a lesser extent the European, but once again, it looks like late this week and into next this coming weekend, pressures are going to be low in the Caribbean and particularly in the Southwest Caribbean. And it looks like there's at least the GFS seems to be picking up on some sort of disturbance that tries to come out of there and heads into the Northwest Caribbean sometime later next week. Now, granted, it is in the long range, but I guess now we want to respect what the model does because with this because it did such a very good job in its long range in picking out Cristobal. So this may be it may be doing it again, and the European gives some credence to this. It doesn't show a wrapped up low like the GFS does, but it does show the large area of lower pressures. And the model seems to be, at least the GFS, trying to do something with this, eventually moving it up in the Gulf of Mexico. We'll see about that, but I would just pay a little bit of, I would pay some attention to this area right in here for late this week and this coming weekend. There's nothing that the Hurricane Center mentions about that. They do mention this area of low pressure that is sitting close to Bermuda. We've been pointing out that that was something that the models were keying on in a weak way, pushing it back westward. But it looks like now that isn't even going to happen. It's just going to kind of meander out and then eventually just get kicks away to the northeast and never becomes anything tropical. And of course, our weather maker this week looks like it will be late Wednesday into Thursday, where we've got this one cold front coming through. But in the meantime, getting there, we do have tomorrow, and tomorrow looks like it's going to be another nice day.
It will. As I said, under normal circumstances, we would look at tomorrow and say, hey, it's really going to be very nice, very comfortable, warm, but still not bad, a lot of sunshine. But again, when you compare it to a pristine, resplendent type of day that we had here today, it definitely comes up as number two
Whoa.
uh, in terms of placement, in terms of, because as I said at the top of the show, this day today probably was not just one of the top 10. It had to be one of the top fives. Uh, you just don't get a day, I think, better than what we had out there today. But again, tomorrow's going to be not too shabby either.
Right. The over the top northwest flow, which is something that we had to deal with last week, this time around it's further north. So this is what happens when you get a nice ridge that builds in the east. So your jet stream is kind of running like this, and you're seeing clouds that are rolling from north of the Great Lakes in southeastern Canada, in southern Canada, moving southeastward into parts of Maine and northern New Hampshire and Vermont. Nothing really to be too worrisome over. But it's just like you mentioned some of these high clouds. It's like looks like a little bit of blow off there from that stuff from the northwest, Joe. But for the most part, from central New England down into southern Virginia, skies are mostly clear, and we've got some really, really nice weather here that we're going to enjoy for sure for one more day. And of course, the tropical system on the wide U.S. shot, the circulation covers a lot of territory here. You've got
It's amazing. It's amazing to me. If I was unaware of the circumstances of the last several days, and you just showed me this view, this loop, I'd say, well, what hurricane is that? It had to be at least a category 3 or maybe even a category 4 to be so far inland and still to maintain a spiral type structure. And look at that, it even has that outflow look working its way now up toward the Chicago area.
Oh
And it's
yeah, it's very
and it's hard
impressive.
and it's hard to believe that this thing never attained hurricane force. It was a I guess you could call it a major tropical storm system, but to me it looks like it could have very well have been, a major hurricane that is now pushed well inland. Because as I said, usually when tropical systems go as far inland as this one is, that you start seeing a complete breakup of any kind of shape or any kind of structure. But this thing really looks like it's holding together, and it'll continue to hold together as it moves northward up toward the Great Lakes.
Well, I just drew in, the upper flow, and of course, we've got this upper ridge here in the eastern part of the U.S. that's protecting us. A deep trough out in the west. This system actually is, it's impacting weather, you know, everywhere. One of the things that happens in a setup like this with this circulation, just as an example, on the southwest side of this, they're getting northwest winds. That's dry air. That's all subsidence, and that air gets heated, particularly when you get down into south and southeast Texas. So I'm going to check to see, but I'll bet you when we look there, we're going to see temperatures, very warm to hot, but we're also going to see dew points that are going to be unusually low because of the dry air that's coming in on the backside. And of course, at the same time, we've got all this dry air here over us and covering back over to the Great Lakes. So we're shielded with that upper high. And then the deep trough that's out in the west is picking this up, and that's what's driving it to move almost straight northward rather than, a lot of times when you get these things that come in, even when they come in the central Gulf, they may start to make the turn to the northeast and go up the west side of the Appalachians. This isn't going to do that. This is actually, because of that deep trough out in the west, it's actually going to move almost straight north and then make the turn up in Canada, which we showed you on the GFS and on the other models. That's why we're really not going to get very much out of this. I would not call the showers and storms that we get Wednesday night as part of this system. I just don't, to me, if you're going to get part of this system, it's the stuff that's inside that circulation. That's not coming anywhere close to here. We would be getting the cold front regardless. So, I'm not going to, I wouldn't attribute what we're going to get Wednesday to the tropical storm. In the meantime, Joe, I just want to point out, I'm just going to bring up the warnings and launches that are up tonight because there are quite a few. It almost looks like, in terms of the coverage, it's something you would see more in the wintertime to be lit up like a Christmas tree here. Flash flood watches from Mississippi northwestward up through Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, into Wisconsin and Minnesota. You've got severe weather tonight with severe thunderstorm watches up from northwest Minnesota, eastern North Dakota, eastern South Dakota, down into Nebraska. The yellow and gold, or the darker, I don't know what color that is or what color you would call it. To me, the brighter gold part that's in western Kansas and eastern Colorado, those are high wind warnings. So they're going for 50-mile-an-hour winds plus. And the darker gold is a high wind watch. You see the heat advisory is up, and even some excessive heat down in Texas. Red flag warnings dry in West Texas and into New Mexico and Arizona. And a slew of frosts and freezes up in parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Nevada, Idaho. So that's the deep trough in the west with cold air, relatively speaking. And now I'm going to I'm going to go down to Texas and look at some obs. Let's take a look at
Let,
how hot it is there.
let's do that. While we're talking about all of this, um, Mr. Briller has posted a Jeopardy for the chat board, the strongest wind ever recorded in the Windy City of Chicago. And I just asked on the chat board, is that for downtown? Is it for Midway? Is it for O'Hare? Um, I don't know.
So I'm looking at some of these temperature obs in Texas, Joe. I'm actually quite surprised. I would have thought the dew points would have been lower, but the dew points are actually ridiculous. They're in the upper 70s. You got upper 70s dew points, and the winds. This is another thing. I guess maybe I didn't look early enough. I just kind of took a guess. So now I'm looking here, and the winds are all actually mostly southeast. I would have thought they would have been all northwest. Just go figure. That's kind of
Oh,
surprising to me, but it is hot. I mean, you got temperatures, middle to upper 90s all over the place. It's pretty brutal.
90, 93.65, 162. I'm going for temperature and dew point, 97.72. Oh,
You got to go pretty far back into the western part of the state at near Midland, and then it's 102. It's 102 in Odessa with a dew point of 36, so that's a relative humidity of 10%.
yeah.
And is that the hot spot? 102, 102, 104, and 49 at Big Spring, Big Spring McMahon Wrinkle Airport. Okay, 104, dew point 49, 16% relative humidity.
Wow.
That's disgusting.
Wow.
That's just disgusting.
103 and 37. I'm looking at. Uh, that's
I have 102 and 36 at Midland, as I should. That's
yeah. I just
10%
said that.
relative humidity
Well, what I
there.
just said was not too far away from England. Um, our,
105.
and our former colleague Addison Green down in Houston. I hope he's. I hope he's used to it by now. What he's getting.
Only 88 though in Houston. 88, 77 dew point, 71% humidity.
Uh,
They're mostly cloudy there. Oh, that's really that's awful. All right, let's
See,
look.
I'd be going crazy right now with this gigantic white mop on the top of my head, which has not been trimmed in about 12 weeks, and which, by the way, I'm finally going to get it cut tomorrow. So, but I don't know how I'd survive. I don't know how I'd survive down there. Well, I'd be in front of the air conditioner probably for the entire
Well,
good
it
12
is
weeks.
it is it is a challenge. You would just definitely would like to wear your hair short because otherwise the sun is so strong it'll just burn it off.
Yeah.
All right, there's your circulation on the radar still intact. You got an arm of strong storms tonight moving across Mississippi and Louisiana down into southeast Texas. You've got some scattered thunder in parts of southeast Georgia and off the Florida coast. At least finally, the rains have stopped in the state because of being inside that giant circulation. It rained for quite a few days in the Sunshine State. Meanwhile, seeing some showers and storms scattered around up in northern North Dakota, northeast North Dakota, northwest Minnesota. Also seeing some storms up in parts of Montana. A little bit of what looks like just plain old rain down in southern Wyoming and northern Colorado, north central Colorado, and some scattered showers in parts of Idaho into Utah. Looking over into California, looks pretty quiet there. A little bit of action up in the Pacific Northwest. So let's look at what the Storm Prediction Center has to say. Now this is for Wednesday. So let's back up. Hang on. Uh, you can see I was not well prepared today.
That's because you walked 10 miles.
I know. Come on, switch. My internet is not switching. SPC website is not responding. Let's try it another way. Hold on a second. Okay, looks like my window froze up again.
Oh
All right,
boy.
hang on. I can do this. I have an emergency SPC here. Hang on a second.
See,
Oh,
Joe learned from NASA redundancy. You always have a backup.
you always have a backup. I got to get rid of this. This is part of the problem. Hang on there. Okay, so this is today is June 8th, so it's the right map. So you see the risk areas tonight enhanced from central Nebraska to northwest Minnesota. One working severe thunderstorm watch at the moment, well up near the Canadian border. Slight risk in parts of eastern Mississippi, westernmost Alabama, and that's of course responding to the circulation of what's left of Cristobal as it eventually becomes extratropical, and of course no thunderstorms in the Mid Atlantic or the Northeast. Now let's see if I can finally get this to change. Come on. My windows are still stuck. This is not good. You're going to have to help me, Joe, because I can't see. Um, it's like everything froze. My Chrome froze up on me, so I can't see
Well, don't
the.
forget that I'm running about a minute behind.
Right, I can't see the chat board, so you might have to
Oh,
help me with that.
oh well. As I said, the Thriller Jeopardy on the chat board is what was the strongest winds in Chicago, the greatest winds. I don't know if Scott had provided the answer to that. I just want to know from where. Was it downtown Chicago or one of the two airports? Now, obviously, if this wind record is earlier than, let's say, 1950 or 1945, it couldn't have been at an airport, um, any municipal airport. But they're talking about, Mark G's talking about soaking wet with those dew points. William Huber, Chuck C, hello up there, and just you know
They're just yapping away.
bouncing about amongst themselves
Well,
here.
my window's working again,
Okay.
so I got the surface map up. We got this.
William Huber suggests WD-40
No,
for your windows.
thank you. Thank you, Bill. So high pressure building here and holding in the east. You've got your low that represents our leftover Cristobal in southern Arkansas. You see it here analyzed as a 995-ish low, moving northward, stationary boundary that runs from southeast Missouri through southern North Carolina. It's very humid in the southeast and down in Florida, where temperatures are in the 80s. Jump to the other side, and it's in the 80s in Virginia and into North Carolina. But you start to move up into northern Virginia and, of course, up by us, and you start to get into those wonderful dew points in the 40s. And that's what we're going to try to hang on to for at least a little while longer before we go into tomorrow and bring them up just a little bit. But again, certainly still will be, pretty very nice. Here's WPC's 7-day rainfall forecast. A little bit of stuff in South Florida, the middle and upper Mississippi Valley around the Great Lakes, getting up to several inches of rain in some places. We're being shown about a half an inch to an inch of rain, and this probably is from stuff from Wednesday night into Thursday. So let's take a look. Let's go to that, and let's take a look at what's happening once I get rid of this. Oh, come on.
Are we stuck again, Joe?
No, this is just one of those days here. I got a stuck pen now. Hang on a second. Let me close this window. Maybe that'll help. Yeah, something's wrong. Something is not working right with my Chrome tonight. It's like just kind of stuck. Never gets like, and I don't have that many loops open. I have only one loop running right now. All right, so we got rid of that. Let's see if I can pull it up. Let's bring up tropicaltidbits.com, your go-to place for weather models. Always want to be able to throw in a shameless self-promotion for Levi Cowan whenever possible. Okay, so as far as the upper air is concerned, we always like to look at that first. And of course, we mentioned the fact ridge along the East Coast, trough off the East Coast, deep trough in the West. You see the center that is the former tropical storm, which gets absorbed, becomes extratropical, and of course, by the time we get to Wednesday, the ridge begins to move off the East Coast, and this system moves through southern Canada. Trough swings into the Northeast, and this is where it got a little problematic with the models, dropping a trough down, Joe, into the Appalachians over the weekend, and I was just trying to figure out, are we going to be dealing with some kind of stalled frontal boundary, which is what the GFS was showing back a few days ago? It kind of backed away from that earlier today, but it does show this upper trough kind of hanging around over the weekend, so I'm wondering whether that might create some issues.
I noticed that on the hand-drawn progs from WPC, Weather Prediction Center, that they had a weather front, the cold front that we're looking, for on Thursday, reach the coast on Friday, and then just sit there for Saturday, Sunday, and even on into Monday.
Yeah, but it
And
didn't even do much with it.
and they don't do much with it at all.
Yeah, see that short wave, it kind of splits off this upper low that's moving up into off of Labrador and moving northeastward. So it kind of leaves this trough behind. And meanwhile, we got another deep trough that comes into the west. It's unusually strong for this time of year, coming into the Pacific Northwest over the weekend. The trough in the east kind of lingers and actually cuts off over Virginia and North Carolina for the middle part of next week. And then eventually, what's in the west does a repeat performance of what this one's doing. It comes over the top, and then that probably brings some kind of cold front at the end of next week. And suddenly, we're at Father's Day weekend, Mr. Rayo, and we've got a nice big ridge in the east.
So all the dads out there will
Right there.
hopefully be able, will have a hammock, a 3H Father's Day.
Now, if this is right, this is going to mean my prediction of no 90-degree temperatures in New York City may come to may die on Father's Day weekend. But this is out day 12 and 13, so we know that this might be here now, but it may not be then. What's very interesting to me, though, just in an overall scope of things, is for late June, the flow west to east across the United States is actually pretty fast. And you've got these deep
Very
troughs that
progressive.
it keeps coming in. These deep upper lows keep coming into the west, moving across southern Canada, and then exiting out. It's one after another after another. So I mean, at least this would suggest this would suggest that in terms of locking up a big ridge in the east for a week or more at a time seems like that's not plausible if you're going to have this fast flow going from west to east across Canada like this.
And when I said 3H, a 3H day on Father's Day, I was referring not to hazy, hot, and humid, but to hot dogs, hamburgers, and hammocks. And that looks like
Yes.
right now, preliminary, that looks like the kind of day we will have on Sunday. Actually, two consecutive special Sundays. This coming Sunday, the 14th, is Flag Day,
Hmm.
so be sure to display Old Glory if you can, if you have a flag. Of course, it should be displayed every day, but make it especially so on Sunday. And then the week after that comes Daddy's Day.
Yeah. So let's look at the surface map here. And of course, that is snow that you see tonight in parts of Wyoming and even in western Colorado, not too far from Ruthless Goat. He'll flip out if he saw some snowflakes after the kind of winter spring he's had. But there's your deep low that becomes your extratropical storm in Canada. If you look up on the upper center, you can act, which is as far as we can go here on this map, but you can see there's snow being indicated there in parts of Manitoba, maybe even into northern Ontario. The low swings away, and of course now our issue is here's Wednesday. There's a bit of a warm front, Joe, Wednesday morning. And we are, the GFS does pop up a couple of showers scattered around Wednesday afternoon and evening. And then it's Thursday morning that you get the front through with the line of, something that might look like a line of storms. So it would seem to suggest to me that, the storms, if we're going to get them, would be overnight. And then, of course, once the front goes by, 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, that front is still hanging on. I mean, is
Right.
it too fast? Is it going to be further to the west? We've been trying that lately, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah. I just simply set the Thursday straight on through, mostly cloudy with an ongoing shower and thunderstorm threat. And hopefully, if it moves just far enough to the east, that will dry out on Friday. Friday looks like a warm, dry day, and then a cooler day coming up on Saturday.
Saturday and Sunday. I can see that, the old frontal boundary is just sitting offshore, and actually a little low spins off the North Carolina coast late in the weekend, but it doesn't really do very much with it until Monday throws back a couple of showers. But who knows if that's real or not? The bottom line is we're not seeing anything major going forward. It's still going to be a pattern where you are going to get these weather fronts coming through every 3 days or so, and that at least keeps it from getting ridiculously hot and humid for a stretch, which I really don't want now. It's too early for that. Too early.
And Scott Briller brings up, and I noticed this myself on this past Friday, the experimental 3 to 4 week probability maps from the Climate Prediction Center has the entire contiguous United States all in orange, all above normal
So
from
we're
coast to coast.
didn't they try this one other time and it didn't quite happen? Didn't they
I
try
think they
that
did.
in May sometime and it
Yeah, I
didn't and
think
it
they
didn't?
did.
and it didn't
and
work out.
things kept eating away at that forecast of above normal temperatures, especially here in our neck of the woods here in the Northeast. But you're right. You're right. But that's why it's experimental, Joe.
Oh yeah, is that why?
They've
Okay.
been trying. They've been using. They've been going with this experiment now for 3 or 4 years, I think. And one of these days they'll have enough confidence to say, "All right, it's not an experiment anymore. We're going to go 3 to 4 weeks out in advance." By saying experimental, they know that when they're if they're wrong or when they're wrong, they can say, "Well, it's just an experiment right now." It's
Okay, I'm just gonna tell you, I have like lost complete control of Chrome. My whole Chrome. Well, we're done with the weather part of it, but I can't see. I can't pull up Facebook because my whole Chrome is a disaster area. So let me see if I can close it. If it's gonna let me close it, something went wrong. Okay, so I just closed it. Let's see if I can open it again. Having one of those days. I saw Steve Lapointe, by the way, put up the stock market report. Considering where the market bottomed in March, this has got to be. I've been watching stock markets since the '80s. This has got in the last 35 plus years. So your 401k should be back to a 401k.
out of work. Seeing that our 201ks have our 201ks have become our 401ks pretty much
Yes,
again.
that's correct. Yeah, I got a little thing came up that said your internet connection is unstable. No, no kidding. I almost, I almost used a more colorful word,
Yes.
but I didn't. I cannot see the chat board, so you're going to have to help me out with this. All right,
All
so you
right.
pay
Well, I
attention
mean,
to the chat board. I will see if I can pull down. Oh, this is just so insane. I'm having one of those days today.
Scott Driller says no Driller Jeopardy tonight. What are we going to do? And then he puts about 8 or 9 um, emojis with
Hang on, I got it. I got it. I got it. Okay, you ready?
you got you
By the
did get
way,
them.
I'm supposed to forward this to you. I forgot to forward this to you. But you know the whole thing about Andy Griffith?
I saw.
Oh, you got the link?
I got the link and
Okay,
I
good.
saw.
Okay. So,
What amazed me is that on that same link, and I never saw this before. 2 episodes of the Andy Griffith Show where he had his hand bandaged up, and they in the show they said, well, he got that way by, trying to get a criminal, a little bit of a ruckus with a criminal, I think. But the real reason was that off camera, Andy Griffith tried to put his or his fist through a wall. Andy
ah,
Griffith, Andy Griffith was not the mild-mannered sheriff,
no,
I guess.
apparently not.
He must have had a little bit of a temper.
Yeah, it could very well be. Uh, so, since 1851, Mr. Rayo, how many hurricanes have hit the United States?
Well, Mr. Chiaffi, that's what, 160 some odd years or
It's
whatever.
170, 160, let's round it off, 170 years.
Why don't I just say, since I know that there have been some years where we have not had any, and then there have been some years where we've had an enormous number that have hit the United States. So why don't we just flatten it out and say either one for every year, maybe a little bit more than that. I'll say 180.
292. The logic was good. You just needed to go a little bit higher. If you'd have said maybe 2 hurricanes a year and then kind of went under, you would
Yeah.
have got. But the logic was good. But by Price is Right rules, you would have gotten the correct one with your guess, and I would have been incorrect because I would have gone over. So we always use Price is Right rules.
If I had come within $250, I would have won both
Now,
showcases.
of those 292 hurricanes, how
Right.
many of those hurricanes since 1851 have made landfall over this great state of Florida?
Oh, well. Well, you think about this for a moment now. I mean, we can eliminate a fair percentage of the United States anyway. Gulf of Mexico and up in New England and blah blah blah.
Blah, blah,
Over
blah.
over over Florida, I would say I'll say 130.
Um. Oh, see now, by Price is Right, you actually Very close. But by Price is Right rules, you would have gone over. It's 120.
Eh.
Not bad though. That's a good guess. That's a good guess.
What's
Uh,
the what's that
120.
sound effect? Boom, 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 boom.
Whoa.
Wow.
Okay. Only two tropical systems were retired without making hurricane strength since 1950. Actually, you left out one, so there's three.
Really?
Yeah.
We must be talking about a tropical storm that must have just sat and sat and sat and sat and dumped like, 30 or 40 inches of rain on one spot or whatever. Um,
Yes.
Obviously, Harvey did something like that, but that was a hurricane.
Right.
Um,
You know what? This is probably one of those. If you lived in the geography where they got it, they had this. You would have. You'd probably remember
it
it.
would have to be. Let me just let me say this. I would suppose that it would have had to have been in the Gulf states. I
Oh
can't see
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I
Um,
can't see that happening. Let's say with something along the eastern seaboard. It would have to be
Erica in 2015 and Allison in 2001. I also think that they retired Imelda from last year in southeast Texas
right.
because that produced like 40 to 50 inches of rain. In some areas that got it from Harvey. Just what was it, 2 years before or a year before, 2 years before or a year before. So yeah, so it's three. So that's you got nothing for me.
No, I have nothing. Scott did not send me anything.
Well,
The
that's
last thing I got,
okay.
the last thing I got from Scott was a thumbs up on yesterday's on the Sunday questions. I think so.
All
But
right,
well, what the heck?
exactly. What the heck? So I guess we'll leave it at that. I can't see what's on the. I don't have the chat board up because of my slight technical issues. But it's a Monday. It's a new week, so we'll get that all fixed up so everything is working the way it's supposed to tomorrow. So we'll be back tomorrow night, folks. Same bat time, 7 o'clock Eastern time, for the another rousing rendition of the Joe and Joe Weather Show.
And
And
Quincy McCoy says Rayo funny with the horn, like a horn loss sound. Price is Right. You like that, didn't you?
ba 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 da,
Oh no, you
woo,
have to go a little lower, Joe. Boom,
ba
boom,
ba ba
boom.
woo,
Wow.
wow.
All right.
All right, everybody, have a great night. Enjoy tomorrow, another good day. So take advantage of the nice weather when you have it, because then when it's not, you'll get mad. Bye, everybody.